preacher man, yes he was. He was. Yes he was.
Today I'm joined by my new friend Mike, and the interesting thing about this is he's my first guest who I've only just recently met, as opposed to all my other guests who have been friends and family who I've known for years. We met organically here in Philly, through a friend of a friend, and we were talking, and I found out he's a preacher's kid as well. So my curiosity was piqued, of course. And now here we are recording a podcast episode together. Yeah, just want to welcome my new guest, Mike.
Thank you very much.
So Mike, you were, or you still are, technically a preacher's kid.
Yes, 2 times over.
2 times over?
Yeah.
Meaning?
My dad and my mom.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Both? Wow. Man, okay, wow. We're going to have a lot to talk about then.
Oh yeah, it's a fun one.
So give me the rundown. So sort of like where you were born, how it all started.
Sure.
Did you travel around a lot?
No travel. Well, in the city, yes. So we're from North Philly. My dad was ordained when I was like young. I think maybe like 5 or 6, and but we've always lived in the city. And then when I was in high school, we moved out to Jersey. And my mom became a minister maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. But we had always been a part of the church. And so I grew up with my mom. So they weren't never married. So I grew up with my mom and went to church with her.
They never got married?
No.
Still to this day?
Nope.
Wow.
Oh, but they have separate families. So my dad has my stepmom, 2 daughters, and they live in near Cheltenham. Then my mom, stepdad, 2 kids, son and daughter, and they live out in Jersey.
So they had you out of wedlock
Before, I was the college fund for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So they had you, and then they decided not to get married.
Yep.
But so your mom just raised you on your own?
With my grandmother, but yeah.
Okay. So how close were you with your father growing up, or how much was he around? And
So my dad was. So I saw my dad pretty frequently, actually. I would say, I don't remember the frequency, maybe like once a month. And it became a little less frequent when we moved to Jersey, obviously. But he was around,
was it Jersey around here, like
Mount
South
Laurel.
Jersey?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we, and I went to private school from up until the move to Jersey.
Was it a Christian school?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And and he obviously helped pay for it. So he was always present, but he wasn't always around. He was omnipresent, but he wasn't always around. So most of my interactions were with my mom, my grandmother, and then subsequently my stepdad. So, who was also very much into the church too. So
okay.
we, so it was always every Sunday, go to church, maybe I think Wednesday, go to Bible study. And then of course, if I go to, since I went to Christian school, then I'm exposed to it there as well.
Right.
Which is a whole nother animal.
It's a hefty dose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is it's almost, and I feel like in some ways, there's a bit of indoctrination, when
you start with kids so young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's immersion. Right. It's just constant, boom, 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 boom. And it kind of, I won't say it put pressure on you to be a certain way, but there is a level of appearance that has to be kept up.
Yeah.
Even if I wasn't really into it, you just did it because you had to keep the peace.
Right.
So
just whether you want to go to school or not, you just kind of have to go to school.
Right.
Like that kind of thing. You just do what you're supposed to do. You gotta do it. Yeah.
It was the thing. So And I actually chose to do an internship at a missions organization after high school. And about a month before I was supposed to go, I'm like, you know what? On second thought, I don't want to mess with this anymore.
With religion in general.
In general, but that whole idea of immersing myself, because that was a choice. And
Right.
the choice was to
Once
go,
you graduate high school, you turn 18, you're on your own, then it becomes more real in a sense because you realize you have that choice to either accept it, go deeper into it, or reject it, try something else.
And especially with this particular situation where I'm not sure if you've ever heard of teen mania, but
Teen mania?
yeah. Oh,
No? Is
Jay.
That like a wrestling thing?
It should be.
It sounds like it.
But dude, if you've never, all right, so I'm gonna give you the brief synopsis of it. But after the fact, I almost feel like we should watch the MSNBC expose on this before we continue.
Oh wow!
But so Teen Mania is a missions organization. It was founded by this guy that went to Oral Roberts named Ron Luce, and he started this organization with the purpose of getting teenagers to go on mission trips, which I went on one in my junior year.
Okay.
And then it grew from mission trips to basically youth revivals in different cities. And then eventually they wanted to create a training program essentially for the future Christian leaders to go through called the Honor Academy.
Okay.
And the Honor Academy was this internship. And
The one that you signed up to right after you graduated?
Correct.
High school.
But this internship, I use quotes on this one because we paid them for us to be there. Mm-hmm. And
of course.
We lived in Texas on this sprawling campus.
You're talking about the one you went to in your junior year?
No, this is the actual internship. The mission trip, I went to Mexico.
Oh, wait. So after you turn 18 and you're on your own, you were going to go on a mission trip. You decided not to?
No, the mission trip happened junior year over Christmas. I did that. And then
that was to Texas or Mexico?
That was to Mexico.
Okay.
And then I chose to do the internship at the Honor Academy in Texas after I graduated high school.
Okay. So you did do that?
I ended up going, yeah.
Okay.
And I would actually say that was the tipping point for me. Because once
you were already there and in it.
Yeah. Because I had some trepidation heading into it, but then once I got there and was just like, it's a mind fuck. It's serious.
Yeah.
And some of the rules are no dating, no sexual contact, of any kind. So you couldn't masturbate either.
Of course. Right.
And what are some of the other ones? You had to go to church every Sunday. They had particular Bible studies that you had to attend.
See, I'm always curious when I hear things like that. I'm like, or else what? Though? Like, what are the punishments when you don't comply?
You give them probation and then you get kicked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which eventually was what happened with me.
That was your way of exiting the program. I'm just going to do bad shit, and then they'll eventually kick me out, as opposed to me officially being like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Effectively. Well, because I told my parents that I didn't want to go, and they were just like, well, actually, rephrase. I told my mom that I didn't want to go.
Okay.
And she and my stepdad were like, no, you're going. Because they had already paid.
They had already paid for it. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's no refunds, I guess.
There wasn't even a check into it.
Because they really wanted you to go, though.
Probably.
Not just for the money. They wanted you to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So then after I left, I came home, and I think what happens a lot of times in the church is that it's like they don't always attack practical things. There's, we follow these rules and we follow the doctrines and the rituals and things like that, but we don't always deal with people where they are and deal with individuals where they are, so I came back and...
When you say where they are, you mean this person is gay, or this person came from an abusive environment. Like, they don't deal with individuals on a person. Is that what you mean by
Yes.
Okay.
Because like if you did, I think that you would more churches would benefit from stronger attendance. Because ultimately that's what churches want.
I mean, yeah, people would feel like they're personally catered to.
Right.
They're accepting me for who I am. They're helping me deal with my individual personal struggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and so I came back and I went to one of our senior pastors and was just like, hey, I think it would be of benefit if we revisited how our teenagers are communicated with.
Wait, you say you came back. This is like after you're done with that thing in Texas.
Correct.
You came back to Philly.
Yep.
And then you're talking to the pastor here about your thoughts on sort of how religion should maybe go this way.
Yeah.
Different way.
And it doesn't have to be like you have to shift everything with the entire church, because there are, adults that, they can make these choices for themselves, like at this point. But, like if you don't expose kids to, and I think in some cases, like right now, kids are overexposed, but
Overexposed to
life, like kids at like fifth grade are talking about sex.
Yeah, right. Right.
But like a teenager in high school, like where a lot of people are, if you are in a public high school particularly, like you have drugs, alcohol, sex, having to deal with, you're soon going to have to deal with money. Like those are things that we don't necessarily tackle when it comes to our teenagers. Not everyone. There are some people that do, but not everyone. And our church is one of them.
Oh, you mean within the church, they're not dealing with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so so I came back and I was like, hey, like, I think it would be great if we at least looked at some different curriculums or different ways of talking to our youth. Mm-hmm. It's like, all right, well, why don't we go talk to Brother Nurse and, you can talk with him about it, and then you guys can pray about it. And, and pray with him about your troubles. It's like, well, I know that prayer is great and all.
You want to take action.
Yeah. And what James says, faith without works is dead. You have to actively work at this shit. Mm-hmm. You can't just pray and hope that God's going to just magically, boop.
Right.
There's a reason why doctors have the talent that they do. If you're sick, you go see a doctor.
Right. You don't just pray about it.
Yeah. You don't just pray about it.
Yeah.
So you should actively want to take part in this. So, so after that whole just pray about your shit, I was just like, maybe this isn't for me. But I did try a couple different churches in Philly after I stopped going to that church, and it just hasn't really quite been the same since.
So you, in your 20s, wait, how old are you now?
37.
37, okay. So in your 20s, you tried different churches. Did any of them stick at all, or you just...
Not really. No. And I became a little more Berean about my approach. And
More what?
Berean.
Berean?
Yeah, exploring, getting into it, hearing something that someone says, and then going and reading the text that they're saying and seeing if I had the same reaction or the same...
Texts within Scripture?
Yeah.
Or just books or other things?
Scripture.
Okay.
And seeing if I agreed with their take on it.
Okay. Like different pastors, what they're preaching.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I found a lot of times that I didn't always agree. Because, there are... and I was actually just texting with someone about this recently. It's once you introduce people to the equation, things can go haywire. If... and I do believe that there is, there is a higher power. I believe in intelligent design. I believe that there are, there are inherent rights and there are inherent wrongs in this world. But if what Jesus intended for things to happen, or if there was a particular intention behind his teachings, it was bastardized as soon as people got their hands on it. It's like whisper down the lane. Like I tell you something, and then you tell someone else something. Then by the time the 10th person gets to it, the original message is completely diluted.
Right.
And so I think that's, kind of where I got to. Like, I think that, people effectively, I allowed people to, or I saw what people were doing and people were saying, and not really thinking that, it's something that I want to continue trying to decipher.
Within the context of a church.
Yeah.
So you might want to continue exploring on your own, though. What are you thinking?
I mean, I do like. So it's funny because I was going to bring my a couple of my Bibles, and I have one with the Apocrypha in it, which are the books that theoretically exist between the New Testament and the Old Testament, but were taken out during the when they were trying to decide what to put into the King James Bible, and they were just like, you know what? Let's just discard these. We don't
Really?
We don't need.
I've never read anything that's in there.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious
I'll loan
what's
it to
in
you.
there.
Yeah, I'll loan it to you. It's an interesting thing that we take the Bible and we just take it at face.
Yeah, everybody, you go to church, this is the Word of God. This is the Bible, and that's, nobody questions it. Nobody's like, well, how did this get to just be, in this pew right now here?
Right.
From 2,500 years ago or whatever. How?
Yeah.
Nobody asks that question. Nobody gets an answer to that question.
Who wrote the text? Like we have 4 Gospels, one of which was written well
Way
after.
later, right?
The
John.
other, no, not even John. Luke.
Luke?
Yeah, Luke was written like in I want to say 20 A.D. And he only.
I thought all of them were written like 20 years later.
Well, Matthew was, but
Mark was the first, right?
Yes. But the thing about Luke is he wasn't there. His book is written based on research. So his account is even like you want to talk about watering it down,
right.
Like his is based on what he heard from other people. So what?
Yeah. And people are hanging on every scripture verse, every word like it's divine from God.
Right.
Now, in the year 2019.
Yeah. And if it is, I mean, awesome. But
how can it be, though? How can it be when you have all these different translations? So
some of which aren't even from the original text. Some of them are based on just taking the King James and like rewording it.
Right. I read, when I was coming out of religion at age 30, I read a book called The Poisoning of Eros. And it was specifically about the history of the church with regards to sexuality. So you could kind of see the whole sexual revolution of like the different players along the way, Martin Luther, and like all these, Thomas Aquinas, and like all some of them were way more prudent, and other ones were way more liberal. But you can kind of see the sexual mores and the rules and the legislation against, what things, apparently it was sinful at one point for a married couple to have sex without the purpose of procreation. Yeah. At one point in time, that the church, the religious leaders were saying that's sinful. This is the thing that modern day Christians fail to understand, is that they're just going to church, a modern day church now, and getting a version of it that's hip and whatever it needs to be today.
Right.
Which is totally different than what it was 200 years ago, totally different from what it was 500 years ago, totally different from what it was 1,000 years ago.
Right.
One of those things specifically is this whole Christianity isn't a religion, it's a relationship.
Yeah. Well, I heard you talking with your friend about that.
And I was specifically Googling that the other day. I didn't get deep enough into it. I found the wiki page where it was talking about it, but I actually wanted to track down where that phrase started and when it started. I don't know that information is out there. I'm hoping I can find it eventually, but I would love to, like we use phrases all the time, like Throwback Thursday or FOMO. Like where do these terms originate? Because we take them, and for that kind of thing, like I would really like to know when this term started, because I don't have the evidence of it yet, but I just feel like I don't think anybody would say Christianity is a religion, not a relationship, 500 years ago. I just don't think anybody would ever say that. So now it's so prevalent when I'm debating online with people about Christianity. A lot of these people tend to go out of their way to say, well, don't lump us in with all the other religions. I give it. Their religions are terrible, but Christianity is a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I'm like, it's frustrating for me because it is a religion.
Yeah. Well,
there's no getting around the fact that it is a religion.
And you guys made the point of if it is a relationship, it's a very one-sided relationship. Which, I mean, by all intents and purposes, like if you had a friend who was in a very one-sided relationship, you would suggest that they get themselves out.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually, I don't know if I touched on that on the first episode. I think I did briefly, but that was a big part of, I mean, I struggled on a number of levels when I left the faith, when I left the church at age 30. Actually, it was, started at 30. And then it took me about a year and a half to kind of come out of it. But a big part of it was this whole religion versus relationship thing. Because I started thinking about it in terms of, is this really a relationship with God I have? Because I started thinking about, like, what is a relationship? Not just the Webster's dictionary definition of it, but what actually is a relationship? Like, how would I define a relationship? When I think about, like, our dogs or my friends or a romantic relationship or my mother or father, like, and then this God thing, how does that or Jesus thing, like, how does that factor into being a relationship? And for me personally, I did a lot of comparisons because I feel like the best relationship I have with anyone on this planet is with my mom. I compared, okay, what is my relationship with Jesus like? Or my relationship with God like? What is my relationship with my mom like? Use that as the barometer, as the control, right? Well, I have conversations with my mom. They're back and forth. I stop and I listen to my mom. That's a component. That's an aspect of it that's very important. The other aspect is she's actively listening to what I say and actively responding. If I bring something new, she responds with something new. Like, I could break it down in all these ways where I'm like, another aspect of it is entirely unique in the sense that I am her son. I am her only son. She is my only mother. She will not interact with me and talk with me in the way that she values me differently than she would any other person on the planet. There's that uniqueness and that, like, it's way more special of a relationship than any other relationship for her or for me with anybody on the planet. Comparing that with God and Jesus, if there's 1 billion followers of Christ, and I'm like, well, okay, he's got a relationship with 1 billion other people. How special does that make me feel?
But the argument there would be that you are unique and he speaks to you in the way that you need to be spoken to. But then the question then becomes, for me, less about, like, me and him, or her, which is a whole nother.
Yeah, that's a whole nother.
But what about, your pastors? You have several, and we touched on this earlier. We started touching this earlier, but, like, you have your leaders, the pastors, that essentially can operate very, very, very differently than the others. Like, you have the Olsteins and the Copelands and the Hins and the Eddie Longs of the world that operate these enormous churches that give them, like, stupid amounts of money to do whatever it is they do, wearing crazy outfits, flying crazy planes, driving expensive cars, and then you have people like my dad, who is the epitome of servant leader. So how is it that you have these stark extremes? Like, why is God telling this guy over here to build a church in a former football stadium where he can have 70,000 people at, but you have this person over here that's...
So are you bringing that up to say that God communicates uniquely with different people and gives them different conflicting messages in a sense?
Yeah. So how is it that you have...
See, my interpretation of that would be, none of this is actually from God. This is all just people doing whatever the hell they want to do.
Right.
And then, oh, well, God told me to do this.
Right.
So, how convenient that fits in with the agenda of me having a personal private plane and...
Right. So, but to your point, it's just like...
But that's not a relationship, though. As I see it and I define it, that's not a relationship. That is a one-sided thing in the sense of people are just making up shit. Like the Kenneth Copeland's like, well, God doesn't want me flying on public jets. Mm-hmm. He wants me, he's making all that up for his own benefit.
Did you hear about the hair?
No.
Where he started going gray and he prayed about it. Uh-huh. And his gray went away.
Uh-huh. Sure. Okay. And he didn't use any hair products?
Nope, no hair products.
Yeah. Okay.
He prayed about it. No more gray.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like... but
I guess I was wrong to lose faith in God. There really is a God then, and he works in mysterious ways. Yeah. Okay, I was wrong. Yeah. He made Kenneth Copeland's hair not gray anymore. All right.
This relationship that we're supposed to have, and the voices and the things that we're supposed to hear from God, mm-hmm. The message should be, I feel like, continuous, and it should be consistent. It shouldn't be conflicting in any ways.
Right. So what we see in the world are conflicting things. So isn't that's more proof that there's something off here?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So back to the relationship thing and why that statement drove me away is because it just wasn't a relationship. And when I would try to engage with other Christians about that, they would say like, well, God speaks to you through the scripture. God speaks to you through the pastor. God speaks to you through fellowship, through other Christians, right? And at the same time, like, I'm just a very logical person, and I kind of, when I hear things like that, I kind of, well, yeah, but what about it? And then mm-hmm. like, I take it to another level. And for example, I would say, yeah, but you agree humans are all fallen and broken, and we all have agendas and motives, and we're all selfish and whatever. So if I want God, the God of the universe, the God who I have a relationship with, why is it that I have to resort to dealing with you, a fallen, sinful pastor or a friend or, Bible study group member or whoever you are? Why do I have to rely on you in order to experience God? And again, I bring it back to the comparison with my mom, which is an actual relationship. That's like saying, oh yeah, I'm not going to talk with my mom anymore and have a back and forth with her and get my direct what I need from her. Instead, I'm only going to talk with my sister, and whatever she happens to tell me about God, or my sister's opinion, about my mom. Mm-hmm. So if I'm talking with my sister and she's like, well, I think mom would want you to do this, or I think mom would want, I'm like, okay, that's kind of your take on what you think my mom would want, but that's not really my mom's. There's a difference there.
Right.
So let's say that my mom dies, and which will eventually happen. Then it's just my sister and me. Okay, fine. Then that's the best I can do, is because my sister knew my mom, So if my sister says something like, well, I think mom would want you to do this, I would take it in and be like, okay, yeah, maybe, yeah. Because that's the best that I can do because my mom's no longer there.
Right.
But in an ideal scenario, my mom is still alive. I can go directly to my mom and have a relationship with my mom. So bringing it back into the God-Jesus relationship thing, I can't get anything directly from God. All I can get are, go look up an ancient Bible scripture verse.
Right.
Or go listen to some other person, again, like the example I just gave you of and that's not even a great example because my sister actually really knows my mom personally. Right. And there's history there, as opposed to just some random Christian or pastor who doesn't know God like this.
Or says they do. Yeah. Fine,
but none of us really are this tight with God. We're all just winging it and trying to figure out. So the whole thing just unravels for me, like this whole relationship terminology for Christianity and Christ. So that was a big part of how I left. It was just like, I'm not buying this relationship thing. I feel like it's a new agey way of phrasing about the religion. That's because that's how people talk so much about relationships now in the last 20 years or 30, 50 years, whatever. It's a modern idea that people are applying to an ancient religion. They're trying to make it more relevant to today's vernacular and today's society and the youth and whatever. But all of that was more grounds for leaving Christianity. It kind of backfired. If that was what they're going for me personally, it backfired.
Yeah, and I can completely get why, it doesn't make sense. Like it's
the relationship aspect.
Yeah, because it's like, like you have to ultimately, like again, like it goes back to hearing God's voice. Like. For me, because it's like in order to have a relationship, I need to be able to talk directly with you. I don't know that I've really ever heard God's voice in certain, in anything. Like sure, I had a peace of mind about certain things, but is that God being like, all right, go do that? Like I've done some dumb stuff in my life, in those moments, like. I was like, all right, cool. I'm fine with this. I'm fine with this choice. Was that God telling me to like take my parents' car out that night and like almost kill some kid? Probably not. That was just a dumbass choice that I made.
Something tells me you weren't wearing your WWJD bracelet when you did that. Because I don't think Jesus would do that.
No, but it's the truth though. It's just like, come on, man. Just own it. Just like be like, look, I just want to be rich, and I want to do it on the backs of people that, think I hear God's voice. That's the more accurate description of it, versus anything else you can throw out there.
Yeah.
And
there's a great Futurama meme about that. Remind me, I'll show it to you later. But
okay.
It's basically Fry. Have you ever watched Futurama? Mm-hmm. So it's like he's squinting, that meme where he's squinting, and then it's like the first frame is something like, I don't know whether to inform Christian people about their naivete or whatever, or like take advantage of it and make a lot of money. It's like, I've chosen the ethical path of trying to wake people up about stuff, but the unethical path would be to be a Joel Osteen myself and just, take advantage of naive religious people, because I don't have to prove anything either. I can just tell them words and they'll believe it, because that's essentially what Christianity and religion is.
Yeah.
They literally rely on faith and they don't require any proof of anything. So I can tell them, I prayed last night and God turned my hair orange.
Right.
And as long as I show up in church with orange hair, even though I went to the bathroom and just dyed it an hour ago, they'll believe me.
Right.
Or realistically, a lot of them won't. But it's the same logic that they're using to believe in Jesus died and rose from the dead and everything that happens in the Bible. It's the same logic as, well, why won't you believe me that God turned my hair orange? Why not?
Yeah. And
It's the same logic, though. But they're not inherently logical. I mean, human beings in general are not the most rational creatures in the universe. We're highly irrational, even the ones who claim to be. I make irrational decisions all the time. Mm-hmm. We're emotional creatures.
Yeah.
We act on impulses, but I'd like to think I have some degree of rationality where I at least seek some proof or some evidence or, some patterns for understanding the world and how to make better decisions and how to live life and all this kind of thing.
But I think that emotional nature is probably what allows people to be sucked in and stay sucked in. Because a lot of I know very few adults that became Christians as adults. I feel like it's almost necessary for it to start younger and to keep it through.
Yeah. My friend Brian, though, he converted later. He was not raised with religion.
Okay.
I was. And we flip-flopped. So now he's Christian, married a Christian girl, raising his kids Christian. And I'm the total opposite of that now. So obviously it can happen.
Right.
But see, my theory is, it does happen. Mm-hmm. Adults do find Christianity and adults find Islam and become Muslim.
Right.
My theory is that life is tough for everybody, and people are broken, and people are oppressed and have issues and have been abused and are struggling on a number of levels. And when religion comes along and somebody's promising hope and a solution to your problems, it is rational in the sense of, I am a human being, I have problems, I am going to die. And then somebody comes and has an answer to that. It is rational to be open to, if there's a solution to my problem, I should go walk toward the solution, right? So that makes sense. I can understand why people turn to religion. That makes sense. So I don't really fault people for finding religion or joining religion or staying with religion.
Right.
I stayed with it for 31 years. I don't fault people for that. But what I'm trying to do is expose, just saying what I'm saying right now, is it doesn't make the religion true. All I'm saying is that people desire solutions to their problems.
Right.
Another way you can find solutions to your problems is what I'm doing now, personally, which is my whole life in religion, they told me I'm not good enough, I'm a sinner worthy of death, I can never get it right, I have to pray for the Holy Spirit to do some kind of voodoo magic inside me to prevent me from making bad, sinful decisions. I don't know how that works. I never figured that out. On and on and on. This is drilled into your skull every week.
Right.
And then I left that, and now I'm like, oh, okay, I can do whatever I want. And I have way more clarity of thought, and I also have several more hours per week that I'm not wasting praying about stuff. Instead, I'm taking action.
Right.
And getting a lot more things accomplished, and to me, I'm like, wow, this is empowering. All the things they said I couldn't do, I believe in myself that I can actually do these things and even more things in a way that I never had that with religion, because I was always reliant upon God to open a door of opportunity or to empower me with the Holy Spirit. It's very external. It's God, it's not me. And they even preach that all the time. Anything good you do is not of you, lest you boast of your own works.
Right.
It's from God. And everything bad that you do, that's you. So you're shit on either way. I don't understand how people can have a positive self-image unless they're completely deluding themselves about exactly what I'm talking about right now.
Yeah.
Which is just breaking it down, the terms of this religion.
Well, it does in some ways. I never really thought about that. You said that to me before, but I just yeah.
About what? Self-empowerment?
Well, the whole idea that, everything that happens is God, and in some ways, sure, the doors that are opening are,
There are things out of our control for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, but
To ascribe that to God, though, it's like that's a whole nother thing.
yeah, it's just like, yeah, that's really fucked up.
You mean the religious way of thinking about it that way? Yeah.
And even with the talents that you're given, you know, and like I said, like I think we are designed, like each individual person has unique things about them. It just doesn't make any sense to me, the concept of evolution.
Evolution in the sense of we evolved from amoeba?
Yeah.
Or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Big Bang, like all that. But, you know, like we are innately given particular talents, and, you know, for some people, they don't always fulfill those talents, you know, and
Having talent is not enough.
Right.
You have to act on developing those talents.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Work hard. And
yeah. So, but yeah, it's just like the idea that you aren't basically anything without, yeah, you're a sinner unless God makes it happen for you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is that's a great episode, by the way.
Yeah, no, that's my friend Aaron. I use that text tone for him.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. But yeah, and I mean, and a lot of people, like, and when they come out and talk to you about like God, I love when Jehovah's Witnesses come to my door. It's always a fun time.
Do you engage with them?
Sometimes depends on my mood.
On your mood, yeah. Me too. It's funny because like, remember how I said I was living in Stafford in the middle of nowhere and I have like no social interaction, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was one time like my parents were out of town, so I'm just there in the house by myself. I'm just like bored. Some Jehovah's Witnesses came to the door, and they might have been a little bit surprised because I was like, you know what the thing is? I was just a little bit. I wanted to talk with them.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a little bit nervous about inviting them into the house because I'm like, just having two strangers in a deserted area, like into the house. I'm like, I've seen enough scary movies where I'm like, but I was like, let's just stay out here on the front porch and talk for a little while. I'm like, I'm that sort of desperate for human interaction. Yeah, I was just like, all right, that's why I'm glad I got out of that and I've moved to Philly and yeah. But anyway,
dude, the most recent one was a few weeks ago, and
wait, how did you interact with them?
he came to my door.
You have like a house, like a street level house
Yeah,
here?
I'm street level.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So so he comes to my door, knocks on the door. You know, I come over, and you know, he's like, "Hey, can I give you this?" And it was a track about like having your life be worth something, and he immediately launches into this story about how this girl killed herself and how it devastated her family, and that we should never kill ourselves because it's selfish and leaves a hole in people's lives, and it crushes them, and they're going to be sad and all this other stuff.
This is all in the tract? Or
This is him talking to me about it.
Okay.
Like, the track was like, your life is worth something, and he gives it to me.
Okay.
And then this is him telling the story. And so I look at him, I'm just like, so her possibly feeling like her taking her life would be of help to her family. Maybe she was a burden on them. Like, she felt like she was a burden. And, you know, you don't know, like, whatever the situations were.
So are you just kind of playing devil's advocate?
A little bit.
Okay.
But also because, like, I have had suicidal thoughts in my life. And I know that for myself, a lot of those thoughts stem from, you know, that feeling that I haven't really achieved what I want to achieve, or that, you know, I haven't, that maybe my family would be better off without me or whatever. Like, so those are thoughts that I've personally had, you know, so I'm like giving him that. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, no. It's just like, you can never do it because it's like as soon as you do it, like you're just giving into your selfish thoughts, and it's like I'm just like, dude, like not everyone's like that, you know, like, but there's this inherent thing that like when you go and talk to, like, I feel like when you're witnessing, you're inherently just going to. Some people don't know how to like hate the sin and love the sinner situation.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and it just almost felt like that for him, like with my interaction with him. And, yeah, it was just really funny. For me. It was a lot of fun for me because he was like, it looked like he felt very uncomfortable. And
And you think that was a new sensation for him to feel uncomfortable like that? Or
yeah, because I think people just let them say whatever they want to say.
They usually make the people, the recipients uncomfortable, but they themselves are quite comfortable dishing it out.
Yeah.
But you had him on his laurels a little bit, like.
Yeah, because he didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
It's like, like, oh, of course, like, oh, they're obviously selfish for committing suicide. That's a thing that's, you know, that's great. It's like, yeah, it's not a thing. You know, like, I mean, at least it's this.
I look at it more as, with regard to suicide, like, people are in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, I have tinnitus, so I lost hearing in my right ear 2 years ago, coming up on 3 years. I go, wow, 3 years ago, wow. And luckily I got a lot of my hearing back, but I have permanent tinnitus. So I have this ringing tone in my ear constantly. And I got to say, it's really changed my life in a lot of ways. There's kind of like before that and after that. I don't think I'll ever follow through. And I've had suicidal thoughts before that for various other reasons. Romance, loss, relationship, just failure, whatever. But ever since this happened, it's almost like I look forward to death in a way, because that will be my only escape from this. And I've joined a couple hearing loss groups and Facebook and things like that, where there have been accounts of people who, like this one mother posted in the group about how her son killed himself because he just couldn't deal with the tone in his ear anymore. And it is maddening sometimes, which is why I'm not usually in a quiet environment like this. I usually have to have some background noise or some music or something going on to kind of help mask it. But I will say, suicide is a complicated issue, and not just with suicide, but I feel like with decision making for everyone, people have their reasons, you know. And my whole take is, if we get into political discourse, right? I try not to demonize anybody, because I just feel like there's a reason why people voted that way, or they're pro-choice, or they're pro-life, or there are tangible reasons behind every decision a person makes and every viewpoint that they have. And to deny them their vote or their speech or their viewpoint is to basically deny their experience that has brought them there.
Right.
You know, it's to deny their validity as a person, their existence. So that's why I'm like, I don't really get upset when people are Trump supporters or Trump voters or whatever, because my parents, you know, not every person who voted for Trump is a neo-Nazi white supremacist.
Right.
You know, a lot of black people voted for Trump. A lot of Mexicans voted for Trump. A lot of minorities. They have their reasons, you know? So I can engage with people and talk with people about what their reasons are and maybe get them to question their motives a little more. And that's kind of what I do with Confusianity as well, like just getting people to question their religious views and why they believe what they do. Does that make sense? But I don't really get angry, though. Like, I don't really lash out and judge people like, you're a fucking moron because you're a Buddhist.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, I don't do that, because I'm like, you know, I try to be reasonable and fair. I will say this, though. One of the things that makes me really mad, and it just happened to me last week, is when somebody's talking to me about Christianity, and it's kind of what I just said. Like, I don't discount other people's experiences that brought them. When people start discounting my experiences that have brought me to where I'm at today, and they tell me, I literally, I had this conversation last week online with some person off Confusianity, Instagram or whatever. And the guy I told him, like, look, I'm already resentful that I burned like 30 years of my life in the church, seeking God, seeking Jesus, and ultimately not finding it. And it was a massive effort to pull myself out of that. And I mean, you mentioned before about a relationship and being one way and how that's kind of like an abusive thing and you need to extract yourself from that. Having extracted myself from that through everything I had to go through and losing my social network, losing friends, losing a lot of whatever, and finally coming to a place where I'm like solid, you know, like I have a clear identity. Like I kind of know who I am. I trust my instincts more. I'm a positive person. I choose to associate with people who are positive and entrepreneurial and creative and outgoing, and my life is so much better for it. And then when somebody comes along, it's like the guy has said literally, well, God doesn't want just 30 years of your life. You need to commit. You need to give God your whole life, not 30 years of your, like that kind of thing. And it just kind of triggered me. Like, I just wanted to, like, you can't digitally, but I just wanted to, like, middle finger flared, like, fuck you. Like, all of this was just boiling up because I'm, like, so angry about it. Because, I mean, the audacity to just, to me, it felt like, you know, a woman escaping from an abusive husband who's beaten the woman to nearly death a number of occasions. Like, she was lucky enough to survive and get out of that. And then somebody comes along and is like, you know, but he loves you, that husband. I think you really need to go back into that relationship. You know, like that's how infuriating it is for me to be talked down to in that way, to discount my experience of everything I had been through. Like, oh, you're saying I didn't really try enough? Like 30 years wasn't enough to read the Bible inside out and to read all these Christian authors and to pray about it for years? Like, that's not enough? Like, how long do you think a human life is? Sometimes it's not even 30 years.
Right.
And I've already spent that much of my time and energy on it, and you're saying that's not enough. I just feel like, fuck you. Like that's my... I don't get angry about a lot of things, but that's one thing that really pisses me off. Because it is condescending, and it's disrespectful in a way because it's discounting my life experience. You know, it's basically saying everything that you think and that you've experienced, it doesn't matter. That's how I hear it in my ears. That's how it makes me feel. Yeah.
all the animation just there.
Yeah, you could feel like I'm just really. It really makes me angry. It does.
Yeah, it's just like a summary, just blah. It's like discounting and judgment, and it's kind of judgy in some ways. You know, like it's just like you don't know what's good for you.
Yeah, exactly that. Like I can, on the flip side, I can say to that guy, look, if you have your religion and that's working for you, that's great. Take it, run with it, go, live your life, do that.
Right.
I'm doing the same thing though.
Right.
I'm affording you the right to go believe whatever you want to believe in Thor or Santa or Jesus or whatever you want to believe. Do that. That's fine if that's working for you. But don't come showing up at my door telling me that unless I do believe exactly like how you do, I'm damned. You know, I'm doing it all wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It breaks down the subjective experience of life, you know. And I debate about the whole subjective objective thing a lot, right? Like truth, right? And we live in this postmodernist society where everything is a construct, right? So there's no such thing as truth or nothing is real. And I hear a lot of that stuff lately, and I kind of push back against it because I'm like, nah, like, I'm a guy, you know, I am XY chromosomes, like, I'm a guy, you know, that's not a social construct, that's just what I am. So I get it, there are some things that I feel like are objectively true or not, or whatever, but on the other hand, I feel like a lot of things are highly subjective, like most things, and like, what is happiness? What is purpose?
Right.
How do you identify as yourself? What does it mean to be rich? What does it mean to be poor? Like, these things are highly subjective, you know? So, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of in this place where I'm like, I think a lot of life is subjective, but there are still some objective truths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are 100% like definitive things that you just should not ever do. You know, like, I'm not going to go murder somebody. It's not because it was in the Ten Commandments. just because I have no right to take someone else's life. You know, like, and I think and I think fundamentally, that's what everyone needs to find for themselves. What is true for you? You know, like, if you read that drunkenness is a sin, it's like, if you have one drink, you're not a drunk. You know, if you have one drink.
But it's a slippery slope, brother.
Yeah.
Never heard that one before.
But it's true. Like, you gotta find what's right for you. And then some people are like, well, you can't pick and choose what parts of this you want to live. And it's like, no, I can. You know, like, and everybody picks and chooses, so that's what they fail to see. Yeah, I would love. You know what I would really love is for people from, or how many ever people from different churches of different denominations come together and have a debate. You know, and have it based on like just like a few Bible verses. You know, it's just like,
and then bring up a specific issue like drinking, or listening to music, or abortion, and then see how they all. And
it's because it's like, years ago I was working with this nonprofit, faith-based nonprofit, and we were reaching out to the different churches, and I went through the phone book, and saw, what was the number? It was like 168 different denominations. Like, how many brands of Christianity do you need?
Yeah.
You know, like,
right.
It's like, what the fuck? It's like, and you walk down the street and there are so many, it's like, why can't you all just live under the same roof? Like,
well, they would all call themselves Christian.
Right. You know, but why, like, how is the message vary that differently that, you know, two small churches, like, you're always fighting for membership. It's like, why can't the fuck you just come together?
I mean, I guess it makes sense. I'm guessing over the years they've probably, you know, I don't know, dichotomized is the word, but like they've gone their own ways because an issue would come up in the church at some point, and half the people thought this way about it, half the people went that way, and they were like, well, we're going to form our own denomination over here.
I mean, fucking Martin Luther.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably that's how we got to 100 and however many denominations.
I mean, but come on, like, it shouldn't be that way. I mean, in my head, you know, like, and we've already said, like, in my head, the message should always be consistent, you know, and it shouldn't literally change that drastically.
Well, this is why I feel like if you try to this is why I'm not really much of a collectivist thinker in general. I'm very much an individualist. I'm very much a libertarian now, I'm realizing these days. Is because consensus requires conformity. It requires an individual having to sacrifice their own personal views and experiences in order to fit into the collective whole. So people can be like, well, I'm Catholic and I identify as being Catholic, but I think there's nothing wrong with putting a condom on. They identify as this collective thing, but really they only like 78% of it. And fine, they have their reasons, they want their social community, whatever. But more and more and more and more, speaking as somebody who's been through the military, who's been through the Christian church, who's been through like these institutions. I mean, even like as an American, I don't even really identify. I mean, I've lived overseas, I've lived in Europe, you know, I'm really interested in Japan. I don't really understand the whole American pride thing in the sense, because for a lot of people who are born here, like, you didn't really choose to be an American. You were just born an American. And if you don't, but when people say idiotic things like, hey, if you don't like it here, get the fuck out. I'm like, no, technically I can't just get the fuck out.
Right.
I can't just walk to another country and go live there. Because you know what? They're going to kick me out after 6 months or a year and force me back into this country. Yeah. It's not a fucking choice to be here. And this is the way the world is structured.
Yeah.
And people fail to understand that basic concept of like, I love Germany. If I'm tired of American identity politics and whatever's going on here, I can't just be like, fuck it, I'm going to go be a German. You can't do that. I mean, you can start the process and apply and be on a waiting list and get a green card after 6 years and try to find, but like, you can't just get up and go.
Right.
You know, like I am an American, whether I like it or not.
You gotta make them.
And one of the beauties of that's still alive barely in America is freedom of speech. So I can say things like this.
Right.
Like I don't have to wear a red, white, and blue flag on a pin on my vest or whatever and walk around like, hey, yay America. And when people at the game are like, USA, USA, and I'm like, I roll my eyes and I don't partake. I'm like, that's my right still to do that, you know? But, sorry, I really went off on a tangent about the USA thing. But what was I talking about before the tangent?
Consensus thinking.
Yeah, collectivist thinking, right. So, yeah, I just believe in thinking for yourself and figuring things out for yourself. And people conflate community with this kind of thing because I do believe that human beings need community. Like, we need companionship.
Right.
We need relationships, friendships, whatever. We need that. That's just fundamental to being human. But that is a subjective experience for each individual, right? So, like, some people are extroverted and they need to be around people all the time. Other people are introverted, like myself. Like, I can see one person a week and I'm like, okay, I'm good. You know, I debate with my Christian friend Brian about that sometimes because he's like, this is all God's plan. Like, we need fellowship. Like, we need community. We need to be in the church with other brothers and sisters and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, no, we're a human being. We need companionship. But you can find companionship in a lot of different ways. I could go to an atheist group or whatever and meet people there and have friends. I can go to a soccer team and do whatever, you know. But that's why I'm like, I don't really like subscribing. Like, even when I went to church in New York, I never officially became a member. Like, I went to this church, Redeemer Presbyterian in New York for like 5 years. And I went. And I tithed a little bit during the week, but like I never officially became a member where you have to tithe like 10% or whatever, you know, requirement. But I didn't do that because I'm like, I disagree with too many things about whatever. I don't want to attach myself to this large corporate entity. But people so readily do that. It's the same thing with politics. Like, there's so many things about the Democratic Party I don't like. There's so many things about the Republican Party I don't like.
Right.
And yet we're forced to, well, are you red or blue? Come on.
Yeah. Binary thinking is dangerous. You know, where you think that it's literally, and again, like, there are things that it's clear.
Male, female?
What's that?
Male, female?
As far as like genetics are concerned,
or like spectrum
identity?
Or binary? Binary or spectrum?
I mean decision making, like binary decision making. So wait.
Well, when you're talking about binary thinking, I guess you're talking about in terms of decision making is bad.
Yeah.
But then I'm also asking you, like, do you think gender is binary or more of a spectrum?
I mean, it depends on. I think sex is binary. I think you were born a particular sex, but as far as like your identity, it's spectrum. Like, if you want to identify as, a woman, and if you want to identify as a man, like, sure.
So even though your sex is XY, you can still identify as a woman.
Sure.
And then go through the surgery and change everything. But you're still technically still a man. You're still XY.
Genetically,
Yeah.
You'd still be a man. But if you identify differently, that's... How about yourself?
I don't know. I'm still kind of feeling out this space. I do find it strange that I could just, like, I've seen some videos where Lauren Southern, she literally just showed up and got an identification card as a man, and she was, you know, she basically legally became a man, like, just by filling out some papers.
At the DMV or?
Yeah, and this is in Canada.
Okay.
But I do find that pretty strange. I can just go into a woman's bathroom And then if anybody is screaming or freaking out, I just pull out my ID card and say, no, it says right here, I'm a woman.
Yeah.
You know, like we laugh about it, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
Like if that's really where this is going, it's tricky. Like I feel like it's bizarre times we're living in. You know, I'm trying to make sense of things that don't make a lot of sense to me currently.
I'm like, look, like I am of the school of thought. Just as long as what you're doing doesn't infringe on what I'm doing, knock yourself out.
Yeah, I'm more or less along those lines of thinking. That's a very libertarian view. Like, just let me do me, you do you. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
You call yourself whatever you want. That's fine.
Yeah, and that's all that we really need. You know, like as long as I can live my life, go ahead, child, do your thing.
Yeah. I'm pretty much on board with that.
You know, but I also think that people right now just get way too offended about those things.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, look, if I don't get it right the first time, like, don't get upset with me.
Right.
You know, like I don't know your pronouns.
Right.
I got that. You know, but like don't get it all in my face about it.
Right. I mean, there's a big difference between that and calling somebody the N-word. You know.
Yeah.
It's like, but I think they're kind of trying to equate these things.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, no.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Like, I mean, I and some, like, you know, the thought process is that although people are genetically male or female, but they were born, like, they were still born as a woman. You know, I've heard that argument. And I'm, you know, more or less, like, you know, that's where the thought of racial versus gender freedoms are equal. And, okay, you know, like, if you're oppressed and you don't want to be oppressed anymore, I completely understand that. Mm-hmm. You know, but please, like, don't try to say...
If I see some woman on the street and I refer to her as a she, and she's all angry at me because she's a he, I'm like, yeah, don't get angry about that.
Yeah.
Like, you look like a she. I called you a she. Like, so sue me. Like,
yeah.
that, yeah.
It's like, I can't do anything about this.
Yeah, like, we've already gone into a very unreasonable place in society where I'm like, I actually want to get into stand-up comedy.
Okay.
So one of my bits that I want to include is like, I literally picked the worst time to get into stand-up comedy. So, you know, typically there's not good money in comedy, but now it's like you literally are not allowed to make jokes anymore about anything.
Right.
And I've chosen now to get into stand-up comedy. Yeah, so...
Or you can just offend people and not give a shit.
Yeah. I feel like you can go one of those two ways. And honestly, my favorite comedians they've all gotten in trouble for offending people. You know, Dave Chappelle and, you know, Louis C.K. and
although
even Kevin Hart.
The Chappelle thing just wasn't funny.
Which thing?
Like, well, his most recent the trio on Netflix.
Yeah.
I just think they weren't funny. Like, and they fell flat.
It wasn't as good as his older material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
So there were some bits I enjoyed, but it's partially just because I like him and I like his delivery style.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
I just like listening to him talk. But I like his energy. I like his vibe. Did you see Chris Rock's new thing on Netflix from a couple years ago? I like it. I didn't like it as much the first time I watched it, but then I went back and rewatched it, and I definitely reappreciated.
I don't really watch a lot of stand-up comedy, and I think it's because I just find it either really good or really bad. And I'm just not like, or I'm just impartial to it. I'm just like the ones that I found funny. Cat Williams.
Really,
I
never got into Cat Williams.
One of them. Like, the subsequent ones weren't great. But the first one, Pimp Chronicles, was really funny to me.
Uh-huh.
You know,
that's the thing. Humor is so entirely subjective.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he's a bit of he's a little over the top.
Right.
But I can relate to the stuff he's talking about, and that's probably why I found Childish Gambino funny too, or Donald Glover. But like I quoted Cat I quote Cat all the time. But someone said that a woman in Louisiana died of possibly the first weed overdose, and it's like side eye. But Kat said in one of his stand-ups, he goes, "That nigga ain't dead. He gonna wake up in an hour and be everything in your kitchen." It's like, because it's weed. It's not gonna kill you. Like, seriously, it'll slow everything down.
Yeah.
But like, it won't kill you.
Yeah.
It's like, all right. Obviously, I didn't deliver it well. But that's the truth. So, but yeah.
So, kind of continuing your story, though. So, that kind of led you up to where you're at today. So, where do you feel like you're at today, spiritually and moving forward?
I think spiritually, I'm just me. You know, like I said, I believe there are truths, and there are there are inherent things in life that just don't waver. You know, like I'm not going to infringe on anybody else's shit. You know, I'm just going to kind of like live my life for me. And in terms of spirituality, you know, like I said, like I do believe that there is, there is intelligent design, but I don't necessarily need to believe that I have to serve that consciousness, for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I mean, that's a thing where I don't know if it's like more Buddhist or whatever, more like an energy that God is. But I think with the religions that we grew up with more so, it's this personified God where it's like the father son, it's the master slave kind of language.
Yeah.
Subservient worship kind of thing.
Us black people are so good at the service thing. Right.
Like, actually, I'm sure that doesn't rub you the wrong way.
I make fun of slavery all the time. But do you know that there was a slave Bible, right?
A slave Bible.
Yeah.
Meaning
there was a particular Bible that the masters produced that cut out things about freedom, and that's what they used.
Wow, that's so fucked up.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised to hear that, but it's like, damn, that's really fucked up.
Well, remember that was the whole thing with Nat Turner. Like he was a preacher that was preaching to the slaves to basically keep them in line. And they then kind of like his owner passed him around to other slave owners.
Wow.
To help try to keep them in check. Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Wait, I thought Nat Turner he's the one who led a big rebellion?
Yeah. Oh wait, isn't that not Nat Turner? No, Nat Turner was from. No, it is Nat Turner. Yeah.
So he was a preacher guy?
Yeah.
But didn't he lead a rebellion? Did he wake up later on and realize?
Yep. He was the one that led the rebellion.
I would love to see a documentary on that guy then.
Well,
I'd love to learn more about that. So that sounds like a crazy story.
It's nuts.
Turnaround.
But it's a thing. And it's just like, and like seriously, like white folks, they do dumb shit. You know.
As do everybody, I guess.
No, but I'm like, but you go back through, like, when it comes to...
vile, unethical shit, you mean?
Yeah. Like the Crusades. Mm-hmm. Like, they didn't need saving. Like, keep your ass in England. Like, it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
But the same thing with the slave Bible. But anyway, I digress. So for me, it's just like... I just need to do what's good for me, and it doesn't necessarily need to follow a script or follow a particular set of rules. I just need to find what is right for me and make that work. Because a lot of I mentioned earlier, it's just like, like the talents that we're given. If they're God-given or if they're just like inherently just there. But, they're there for a reason and we got to develop them, And so, but you don't necessarily...
Well, you don't have to.
Well, you don't.
It's your choice whether you want to pursue your talents or not. I mean, the way I look at it is every human being, we're given a certain raw material in terms of, life is not fair. Let's face it. So people are born into this world with, some people have all the good looks, all the talent, all the money, all the resources, everything, and other people have nothing.
Right.
So it is what it is. So, but once you're born, you're alive, you're in this planet, like, you have some degree. Let's just talk about America, like people who are reasonably, lower middle class, like not people stricken with poverty, but like people who are above the poverty line, or even people who are below the poverty line, but they can maybe latch onto some kind of opportunity to come out of it. So we have choices, there's certain things you can do every day if you're living in a free society. And for me, that's what life is. It's like, what are you going to do? You're alive for a certain amount of time here. What are you going to do? And it's up to you. That's kind of how I look at things.
Yeah.
You can choose to self-destruct. You can choose to lash out and blame everybody else in the world, the universe, God, whatever, for your problems. Or you can kind of pick yourself up by your bootstraps or whatever and just get to work and craft a life for yourself that you like, that you're proud of, It sounds like you're in a good place in terms of being content. Do you feel like you're seeking more of an understanding of God and the higher power, or does it feel more like it doesn't really matter so much? I have enough things to figure out in my life.
It's less about exploring that aspect and more about getting to the bottom of me, and so this is actually why I was late to get to you today, is because I got hung up on the phone with my mom, and we grew up in situations, and we can let those behaviors and feelings and whatnot stick with us for the rest of our lives, or we can learn to adjust, and learn to get through whatever it is that's holding us back. If we feel like
persevere, overcome.
Yeah. And, so for me, I didn't have a awful childhood, by any means. But, there are some things that I picked up along the way that have led me to be not what I feel like I should be at 37, and so.
You mean that a certain expectation has arisen that you should have been at a certain point?
Oh no, I've always had that expectation. I've always had the expectation that I would be something, and I'm not sure what
successful.
That something is. Yeah, but success is very
right.
It's abstract. Mm-hmm. But successful for myself, and I want to feel good about myself, and I want to feel I want to feel that I accomplished something, mm-hmm. And whatever that is, I don't know. But I know that where I'm at right now, right this minute,
you're not there,
isn't it?
Yeah.
And so, I was talking to my mom, who, you want to talk about a shift in paradigms. When I first told her that I went to therapy, she gave me the same answer that my pastor gave me, was, we need to pray about it so we can get you out of it. And
because you went to a secular therapist. They probably would have been fine if you went to a Christian therapist.
No, she didn't even ask me that. Oh. It was just, we need to not have you in therapy and taking pills.
Okay.
So, and today I was it was just hey, I'm actually looking to change therapists because I think that I've reached the point where the current one that I have, we've worked a lot on certain things and we've definitely made progress, but I feel like I need to push further. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if she's the one that can take me there. So eventually, I do think that the dam will break, quote unquote, and whatever I feel like is in me will bubble to the surface. But until then, I'm just I'll get there, but I have to be at least somewhat content with the space that I'm in. Because otherwise, if you're always just looking to get, you're never going to be happy.
Right.
So.
Do you feel like you've been plagued by that feeling for a long time of that expectation of my life needs to look a certain way. Like I need to be married, I need to have kids, I need to have a certain amount of job or income stability, like
Yeah.
or is it like this nagging feeling and more of a vague, my life should be up here and I'm down here somehow?
I think it's both. So, like when I was younger, I definitely had this idea as to how my life was going to look. You know, like married by a certain time, have this car, be in this house, live in this place, you know, have 2.5 kids, you know, and so that was because that was what we were always told. Like that was this
And that's not just a Christian thing, that's just like an American dream kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and so that was, that was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, obviously I haven't gotten those things. And so then it became, at some point it became more of the nagging, like there's more to life than this, because my path has definitely been one with a lot of potholes, and a lot of those potholes were ones that I created by throwing grenades at them. So and so to be where I'm at right now, a lot of the missteps have kind of just like led me this. So like when I was in like early 20s, I used a stolen credit card with a coworker of mine, and ended up with a record, and then I have like a number of other choices that I've made along the way that just have not been, they've been self-destructive, more than building towards something better for myself. And, and so now like I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck, like not totally thrilled just with how this has played out. And I just want to be like, feel more stable.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to be able to go on a vacation or something like that. And those things just aren't attainable because of like where I'm at financially or professionally or anything like that. So, so for me, success doesn't necessarily have to be I'm a
being
millionaire.
a millionaire, right? Yeah, totally.
For me, right this minute, success is just, being stable, being able to do the things I want to do without worrying about, is this bill going to bounce?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to hit my checking account and I got like $2 in there,
Yeah.
Like, and that's just more of kind of where I want to get to. And then if I get to that point and then I want to invent something, great.
Yeah.
That's icing on the cake.
Yeah, but first you need to establish that baseline where you're content, you're satisfied with this, and then go to the next level.
Right.
Yeah.
And so so if I like once I get to the baseline, like that'll be great. That will be an accomplishment for me. Because I feel like I haven't gotten to that baseline. I've been at the baseline and then, something dumb I did.
Another pothole
after another grenade. So, I feel like I'm in like mentally and emotionally, I'm in a good.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're on a good path.
Yeah.
Like one thing I would say, like when I hit 30, I was really down and out because it was kind of a lot of what you're talking about. It was like I was not where I was at in life at 30, like where I thought I would be, like at all. And that's fine if I thought I would be here and I was only here. But the thing that really bummed me out was I feel like I was not on a track toward getting there. So momentum is a big thing for me in life. It's really not about having it all right now, or like with my websites or whatever, or my brands or whatever. I'm like, I know I'm obviously not there.
Right.
But I wake up every day excited because I feel like I'm on the path toward getting there. I have momentum going there. That's what's important to me.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what you're talking about as well now. Why maybe you're more content now because you're at least taking care of things and you're getting help and getting focus and more clarity about your identity and like what you want out of life, and then taking tangible steps toward getting there, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing that fuels us, or is exciting for us, or happiness for us. It's the journey. It's the process of getting there.
Yeah.
But if you're like, that was the thing. I feel like when I was 30 in this religious path, I feel like I was still a virgin at 30, and I was still like waiting for marriage and before kids and all that kind of stuff. And I felt like not getting any love from anybody in the church. And I was like, I was just on a path toward, before the incel was even a term, like I was on that incel path. And then I kind of broke free, and I started making decisions that worked for me.
Right.
And my life has gotten subsequently better. And that's an individual thing for every person. Like, they need to figure out that path toward what they want to get out of life, right? And if you're a Christian and you want to do that, and you're happy with where you're at, and you're on that path, great, But that's not for everybody,
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of religious people need to understand, is like they come at it from this like, well, you need to believe in Allah, or else you're an infidel and you're going to burn, or you need to believe in Jesus, or else your God hates you and you're going to burn in hell. But yeah, like I'm glad to hear that. I think you're on your path, right? And I think that's the best that we can all do. I think the thing that's frustrating for you and probably for me is that, like, things that take us off that path, right? Whether it's external, somebody bringing you down, or whether it's internal, which it sounds like you've been sort of sabotaging yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I was going to ask you too, like, what do you think is behind the self-sabotage?
I don't know. I think there's a level of pressure that I put on myself to be perfect. And, or there's also this level of vulnerability that I'm not able to have because I want to be perfect. And
vulnerability, like it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah. Or it's okay to not be in a particular place, like in life, because again, like at 37, most people would be like, oh, you should have it figured out by now. And it's just like, yeah, I don't. And it's taken me a really long time to be comfortable enough to actually say that, not just to myself, or not just to other people, but to myself. It's
because
like,
otherwise you're pretending, right? Yeah. And internally it's not measuring up with what you're lying to yourself, you're lying to everybody else. And that at the end of the day, it doesn't leave you feeling good inside.
No.
Yeah.
Feels like shit.
Yeah. Right.
And so, and that's and that's where, what I was talking about, like switching my therapy track and like approach is, kind of like leaving that behavior behind, because a lot of my missteps have to do with money choices. There was a time where I was just actively skipping out on rent because I was wanting to go do something, and it's just like, you still need a place to live, asshole. Like, what are you doing? And so it's, so it's just like, it gets to the point where, and you just have to get to the point where you're just tired of that. You just have to really, you have to really just want to be better. And it's not for anybody else other than just yourself. Because if you're doing it for other people, the second that person's gone, or the second that they don't recognize you or whatever, you're back to, all right, well, since that person's not here anymore, I'm just gonna just fuck off, and so, and I'm like, and again, the other thing is I'm really good at looking for happiness outside of myself too. Everything is always
validation, external validation.
Yeah. And so it's I need to be comfortable with myself, and I need to be happy with the things that I'm doing, versus like, is she looking? Is she looking at me yet? Okay. So
swingers?
like, what's that?
What about now? Is she looking now?
So it's just like, and so it's been a hard get. It has not been easy to get to the point where I'm comfortable enough with myself to admit it, and then confident enough in the fact that I'm working at it to say it to other people. And it's, because like go back to like growing up, like if I did something bad or did something that wasn't, considered, the straight and narrow, I just like hid it and lied about it. And, like the sex thing, like I got exposed to sex when I was in, what grade was that? We were living out near the airport. So that was like 91-ish. So I must have been 10. And someone moved out of an apartment, and me and the guys from the neighborhood like went into the apartment because it was like unlocked, and we found a Playboy. And so that was like...
That was similar to my first exposure in the suburbs in Virginia.
Yeah, it was like, it was my first one. So, but, and my parents never really talked to me about it. Again, like going back to practical, dealing with practical things that kids deal with. And so their response was just like, whenever something came up about it, like either it was porn on the computer or the time that I like bought how many ever movies on cable, like pay-per-view.
And while still living in your parents' house?
Oh yeah. Well, this was
Did you not foresee how that would play out when they see the bill? Oh my God. You're very short-sighted. I guess when you're horny though, you don't really think about the future.
Dude, so the end of that story is I wrote a letter to my parents acting as if I was someone in the neighborhood stealing the cable.
Oh my God.
But I used the markers that I had in my bag that my mom went and got and was like, so you wrote this with this.
Oh my God.
And it's like...
This is like an episode, like a really fucked up episode of Full House or something, or like Family Matters or something.
But but their response was always just ground me or beat the shit out of me. So, fuck, I forget what I was talking about.
Well, this is really interesting to me though, because I've spoken before in a previous episode about the education system in America and how it's so deeply flawed, because just the whole grading system of your GPA is what matters.
Right.
If you're going to get into college, like you got to get all A's, you can't get a C or a B or whatever. So every test you go into, you're just trying to get an A. And this is how it was for me, like I got A's, like, and I paid the price for not ever getting an A. So for example, I graduated from a small school in Germany, and I should have been valedictorian. I should have been salutatorian. I wasn't even salutatorian because I took a technical drawing class in 9th grade, and the professor gave me a C+. Ruined my entire GPA enough to the point where I was like, I got like a 4.0 GPA, and then the girl who got salutatorian was like a 4.1 or whatever. So I was like, shit, fuck. Forget about the fact that I enjoyed that technical drawing class,
right,
and it was way more relevant to the things I kind of want to ultimately do. Forget about all that. It fucked me up because I got a C+. That's the problem with our education system. It's all about just getting grades. It's not actually about learning.
Right.
So my point about all that is education in life should be about learning. It should be about failing, because you learn through failing. You learn what you like, what you don't like, what subjects you're interested in, what you're not. So the problem is that very much a perfectionist mentality, especially if you're raised by conservative Indian parents, like you got to get A's and everything and whatever. The problem with that is like now I learn so much more now as an independent entrepreneurial freelance adult. Like every day I'm learning. Like I'm learning WordPress, I'm learning, After Effects plugins, I'm learning, everything. But there's no grade attached to it.
Right.
It's really more about problems that need to be solved. So I need to understand concepts and software and things in order to solve the problems that I need to solve. So I'm just learning, which is great. There's no grade attached to it though. You either know your shit or you don't.
Yeah. And I'm afraid but I'm afraid of not knowing.
Yeah. So there's that aspect of it too. But then also with the example you just gave in your childhood, it's this perfectionist idea. Like you got to do good, you can't sin, and forget about being real. Forget about being a real human being with desires and, going through puberty, and forget about all that. You have to be perfect. You have to portray this image. And as soon as that potential of that image starts getting tarnished, now you got to like double down and pull out the markers and lie and come up with this whole scheme, right? To avoid getting punished for basically your basic human desires. Right. So I have a feeling that on a deeper level that has probably plagued you up until today, as it has a lot of people, because you're still trying to be like, I mean, you said like you're getting comfortable now finally with being like, it's okay, like who I am right now. Like I'm not there yet. I'm not established. I'm not what I should be at 37. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like, but you're just now feeling comfortable enough to say that out loud and say that internally to yourself, And I think probably a big stumbling block to that all this time has been you're not allowed to admit your own humanity, your own shortcomings, your own, because that's bad. But what I'm saying is it's not bad to be human, No,
we got to be perfect.
Yeah.
Come on. We got to be perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's this weird fucked up cycle of you have to be perfect because God's standard is perfect. And that already is fucked up. But then secondly, they tell you, well, you're not going to be perfect. You're a sinner worthy of hellfire according to God's perfect standard.
Right.
Right. So they're already messing with your head because they're telling you the standard is perfection. And then they're making you feel like shit because you didn't measure up to perfection. And what do I mean by when I say they're making you feel like shit? They tell you you're a sinner worthy of burning hellfire for eternity. That is your destiny. You're born into this world. You fuck up, you're going to burn in hell for eternity. So that is the setup for the like third quarter saving grace of, but Jesus comes along and he saved you.
Right.
So it's this really weird fucked up thing. And I think at different points in your life, you'll feel more loved maybe by Jesus because he did that. Other times you might not feel loved by Jesus. Like you're lonely, you're horny. Jesus isn't doing anything for you at the moment. So you're just stooped and you're like, yeah, I'm not perfect. I'm a sinner. I'm bad. I keep repeating the same patterns, which leaves you feeling really shitty. It left me feeling really shitty for a long time. So I just feel like all of this is just such a head fuck. And it takes time to get over that kind of programming.
Yeah. Like I said, it's an indoctrination.
Yeah.
Like it's a constant reminder. And to and for me it was just like on top of like needed repentance almost every other day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like
I remember that.
I was always getting grounded.
Yeah.
On top of all that. And then it's like, well, there's no repentance here. Literally every time I do something bad, I get grounded.
Yeah.
Or something's taken away from me, or like whatever. I get yelled at. I get a spanking. And so, yeah. I mean, it's just like, and I'm not in no way, shape, or form am I blaming my mom and my stepdad for the person I am today. Those were from 18 to 37. I'm responsible for myself. Mm-hmm. I made those choices, just like I'm making the choice to examine those roots and, kind of like uproot that tree so that a new tree can grow. Because otherwise, like I can't stand when people are like, well, I'm like, I have really bad childhood. I'm like, I get that. It sucks.
Yeah. No,
like I appreciate that so
Right.
much. Like, no, I didn't grow up a destitute, but it was an emotional desert in my house. And I 100%, I get it. But like, grow the fuck up.
Yeah. Personal responsibility. You're an adult now.
Yeah. Like you don't have an excuse.
It's kind of the if we say things like victim mentality, that we live in a society of victim mentality, when you start talking about that too much, people will say you're victim blaming.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. Let's not go to the extreme of like let's be reasonable about this subject. We've all experienced various levels of abuse and neglect and whatever growing up. We've all had people bully us. We've all been shit on. A lot of us have had our heart broken. Like, it's part of the human experience.
Right.
So if we can at least start from that baseline, then let's move on to the next step, which is like, what are you going to do about it? And that's where your personal choice and your personal responsibility comes into play.
Yeah. Because there are a plethora of behaviors that you could have had because of those things. And, but ultimately, like, it goes through your head and spits out the result, and so, yeah, and you can't just like fall back on all that shit. It's like everyone's got that back there, and so, yeah. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
It's like everyone. I had a boss who fired me after 5 weeks of working there, and I for the longest was just straight up like, he's an asshole. Like, he is an asshole, but like, I didn't deserve to be fired. This, that, and like blah blah blah. Like, a lot of things I told them, they ended up doing later. Like, so obviously I was right. Total victim. And then recently I was texting my dad and said, I guess I could have just like maybe let him win one of the arguments we had versus like just continuing to fight with him about it. And he's like, wait, you've never said that before. I'm like, because I mean, it was like, I still say my firing was more 90% him just being like uncomfortable with me stepping up to him.
But at least you acknowledge there's a 10% now that you could have helped the situation along a little better.
Yeah. And that's always the case. Like, everything that we go through, we, like, we're not 100% absolved of, I mean, actually, let me say that. A lot of things we go through in life, we're not 100% absolved of blame. Like, there are some situations where you just, like, what happened is just like, all right, that was fucked up, and it happened at me. Like, there's nothing I could have done about it.
Right.
But a lot of our interactions and a lot of the things that we are challenged with in life, like, there is some, like, we can always learn something about ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
From those situations.
Totally.
And we're not always 100% absolved of it. And like, and it's just a matter of being self-reflective. And being able to, again, be honest with yourself about it. And being honest with yourself is not the easiest thing in the world. And,
right.
And that's just part and parcel, because I think that it's a lot easier to just throw your hands up and say, well, I couldn't have done anything about it. That was just the will of God.
Right.
And so, like, oh, well, obviously that's what he needed for me, wanted to happen to me.
Yeah,
or like, it's like
weird, fucked up, yeah, rationalization of things, and just, yeah. Oh, I'm so glad to have gotten out of that. For so many decades.
The perfect will and the permissible will. That was my favorite.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I haven't heard that in a while. It's perfect. Well, there was some phrase. It was like all things are, but not everything is permissible, or something like that. Shit, I forgot it. I should probably just forget it and allow it to leave my headspace. It's weird doing Confusianity because in some ways it's therapeutic. In other ways, I just feel like I should move on and just drop all of this altogether. Like, just drop the whole, like, don't even talk with Christian people about religion, whatever, because I'm not going to convince them of anything, and they're not going to convince me of anything, so what's the point? And whatever. For now, I continue it because it's mostly good. Like, it's either amusing to me, like memes and stuff that I find, or it's therapeutic for me to, like, voice certain things and to have an audience. That feels good. You know, like to just put things out there and people like it, and like that feels good. You know, and to be in a community of, I don't really identify as atheist. I identify more as agnostic, but to feel a sort of support from other atheists and agnostic, like, community people just being like, yeah, religion is ridiculous. You know, it feels good. So yeah, I continue it, but yeah. I feel like the role of religion in my life is, I'm still kind of a seeking, kind of the reason why I asked you how much of your mind, energy, bandwidth you're allocating towards seeking God and truth. It sounded like not that much, because you're really just trying to figure you out.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I probably am spending a little bit more time pursuing God and truth and all this stuff, just because I'm doing this Confusianity thing.
Okay.
Like the other day I had a Muslim guy contact me, and he's like telling me about Islam and telling me how it's the one true faith or whatever. And he's like, have you even have you? I'm like, no, I have not looked into Islam that much. And there's part of me that doesn't want to be an ignorant person that's just kind of like, Islam, that's stupid, and I haven't even really studied it or tried it out. But every time I get a little taste of it, a little dose of it, I'm like, I'm not a fan of this at all already. You know, like I just, you know what I mean? Like I just get that feeling like I don't need to waste. I already wasted 30 years with Christianity. Why do I need to waste 20 more minutes of my life with this Islam thing when my gut reaction to it is like, this is not for me? You know, the praying 5 times a day and facing Mecca thing. I'm like, that's a waste of time. Like I'm already thinking like, what happens if you don't pray 5 times? Who cares, right? Like. All of these things, these kind of things are stupid to me. Like they're not, I don't want to say stupid, but they're not adding value to my life.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, right now, having wasted so much time in religion or whatever, I evaluate my decisions based upon being very clear about what I want, and then evaluating each interaction and decision and allocation of my time and money and resources into, is this contributing toward what I want out of life? Is this adding value to my life or not? It's as simple as that, you know? There was a time, maybe like 5 years ago, where my mom was still trying to convince my sister and me to go back to church. And I remember saying to her at the time, why would I do that? I already know what they're going to say. It's the same thing they've been saying every week at church for 30 years. It's the same sermons. It's the same scripture verses. I already know it. Why would I go back? It's not adding any value to my life. It's like, why would I go sit in a 2nd grade classroom and learn the multiplication tables? Why would I do that? You know?
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn WordPress right now. Something that will add value to my life for me to have this new skill. You know? So, yeah. That's how I phrased it to my mom a few years ago. And it's...
Did she stop, or...?
My mom is actually kind of leaving the faith a little bit herself. So, the only one standing is my dad.
And he's still a pastor, right?
No, he's retired.
Okay.
But, yeah, he's still... With him, I feel like it's too ingrained into his identity. You know, it's like Darth Vader. Like, you know, he's more machine now than man. Twisted and evil. You know? It's, yeah, so I don't really see him ever... He might soften in it a little bit. But, yeah, I don't see him ever leaving It's kind of like, it literally is like Darth Vader when he turns good and it kills him, like to take the mask off and the machinery, because like he's so Darth Vader. If you were to try going back to Anakin Skywalker, it would kill him.
Right.
Like it killed Darth Vader. It's kind of like that. I also run a Star Wars brand, by the way. In case
Oh God.
I do Star Wars mashups.
I like Star Wars. Star Wars is good.
Yeah. Well, it kind of sucks now.
Well,
But it used to be good.
Well,
The original.
The three.
Yeah.
Like 4 through 6 are good.
Yeah.
1 through 3 are abominations.
Yes.
Except for maybe like the last 30 minutes of 3.
Yeah. There were some good parts in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're on the same page.
I did like Rogue One though.
I did like Rogue One. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
That was the blip in all of the new stuff.
Yeah.
I liked Force Awakens okay. That was episode 7.
Oh.
And then 8 was the one they just came out with 2 years ago, the Last Jedi. I
Right.
hated that. That was garbage.
Was it Force Awakens?
Yeah.
Is that the name of this game too?
Maybe. I didn't get into any of the games or anything like that.
Oh, you have an Xbox.
PlayStation.
Is that a PlayStation? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know anymore.
Dude, it's funny, before you came over here, I was just watching videos on FIFA 20. FIFA is the only game I play on the PlayStation. And I stopped playing it for the last... So when I was at home in Virginia in 2017, after my hearing loss, after our dog died, I was bummed out. I was depressed.
Yeah.
2016 was a terrible year. And I know it was a bad year for a lot of people. Carrie Fisher died. I think Prince died.
Mm-hmm.
David Bowie. Like, everybody died that year. Trump got elected. I lost my hearing. Our dog died. So 2017, I was just depressed and kind of out of it.
Yeah.
So I kind of just played FIFA and worked on this app with this developer abroad, and his English was terrible and didn't go anywhere. We're spinning in circles because he just wouldn't fix stuff. But anyway, I played a lot of FIFA that year. And then finally, around August, September, it was kind of the end of the cycle, and the new version of FIFA came out, FIFA 18, in like September. And I bought it, and I started to play it, and it was kind of like you had to start all over again with like building up your club. And,
Right.
And I'm like, I think I'm done. I can't. I need to get my life in order.
Yeah.
You know, like I need to. And that's when I kind of stopped playing FIFA, and it was a good move though. And I haven't really played video games since then. I do kind of tend to have an addictive personality, and I don't want to say I'm addictive. It's just I'm really hardcore about things.
Okay.
And I'm a perfectionist. So like if I'm going into something, I want to like be fucking awesome at it. But the problem is I want to do that about 27 things. So
At the same time.
yeah, at the same time,
Yeah.
which means I fail on all 27 fronts. So I'm trying to get better about that recently. Like Confusianity is something that I really focused on it in February, March time, just to get it up and running, to start the podcast. And so I've gotten it going. It's good. It's got a good flow. But now I'm trying to get other things going. So then I end up neglecting Confusianity a little bit. So I always have to be, that's like my danger. Like I have to be careful about the allocation of my, but again, that kind of pisses me off about religion, because I feel like if I didn't waste so much of my time with Christianity in my 20s, I'm not even exaggerating, because I've been really super productive the last 3 months. I don't know if you know what MGTOW is.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Is that Big Town?
No, MGTOW.
MGTOW. Okay.
Yeah. So it's men going their own way. It's like a hashtag.
Okay.
So I was dating this girl earlier this year, and then broke up, and literally my friend introduced me to MGTOW the day we broke up, and I went down the rabbit hole. And I don't know how to concisely sum it up, but MGTOW is kind of more of a philosophy. Mm-hmm. And each guy can kind of roll with it in his own way. For me, I've basically put off dating, marriage, kids, all that stuff pretty much indefinitely. You know, I've kind of accepted, like, I think that's not for me. And I've realized the positives of it, which is basically like, oh, all my money is my own. Like, all of my time is my own. Like, nobody nagging me. Nobody saying, like, hey, I should do this, I should do that, or why don't we go out on dates anymore? Why don't you take me out? I'm like, that's gone. You know? So my productivity has started to skyrocket the last 3 months, and this is just the beginning.
Okay.
So the way I'm looking at it is like, okay, wow, alleviated myself from this whole relationship layer of life. If I were able to have removed Christianity layer from my life way earlier, there's not a doubt in my mind by 30 I'd be able to play the piano like really well. I'd be able to play guitar really well. I'd be a pretty good music producer by now. I'd be fluent in German, fluent in Japanese. That alone is 5 huge things. And that would have been me at 30.
Got it.
You know, because I want to accomplish all those things now, and I'm starting at 42 now. So I'm excited because I'm just on this course. Again, the momentum thing, right? Like I'm not there, but I'm on the path toward things that are fulfilling to me. Like for me, like skills are fulfilling. Like getting my life in order and like being solid, that makes me feel really good. But all of that is apart from religion, and this thing apart from women is kind of a new thing now, where it's like, it's been kind of eye-opening.
It's a time suck.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
not just time suck, but like texting. This is why I like Chris Rock's new stand-up bit, because I think I learned about MGTOW, and then I went back and rewatched his special, and I was like, oh, this is really good shit.
Okay.
Because like the girl I was dating, it wasn't just about the time spent together. It was like, I'm sitting here trying to like learn some kind of tutorial or go, and I need to focus. And then like the phone's, she's like texting, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you know, I can't just put the phone down and get back to my work for the next 4 hours and not respond. Like, I have to reply.
Oh, I'm awful at that.
Yeah. But like, it upsets women, you know.
Sometimes.
Depends on the girl, I guess. But what I realized was like, I have a lot of regrets about that. It was a short relationship, whatever. But I realized like I needed to have put my foot down like way earlier. And part of me was realizing like, oh yeah, she was just calling the shots and walking all over me and dictating the pace of the relationship, everything about it. But that's just me, because I'm easygoing and I'll just go with the flow.
Right.
But this is also what I've kind of learned in coming out of Christianity and being a manly man, is just kind of like, it goes against the grain of the trend right now, which is like the feminization of men and like female power and destroy the patriarchy and all that kind of stuff. The whole society is going like that, but I'm kind of being more like, I need to be more of a patriarch kind of thing for my own life. Like, I need to be more of a man. Like, just if a girl comes and says this, I'm like, no, no. You know, I don't want that, or I don't want to do that, or whatever. And if she has a problem with it, she cries, whines, whatever. I'm like, hey, if it's a problem, like, there's the door. Free to leave.
I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily patriarchy. Like, I don't know.
Patriarchy is not the right term for this.
Like, I think maybe more just like being in total control of your time and your space and your headspace.
Right.
You know, like my stepmom has a saying.
It's that whole male-female dynamic, though. The sort of power play between the sexes. You know, and the ironic thing is that women actually respect a guy a lot more if they're willing to like put their foot down and kind of put the woman in her place. It totally goes against the whole feminist equality idea. But women actually are more attracted to that as a general principle. Because the guys who are out there, the manginas, so to speak, the male feminists who are out there really actively, a lot of them don't, there's something very feminine about them, and it actually turns off a lot of women. Like, a lot of women actually are attracted to more of a manly man.
Or I think it's just like an idea of like people being in control of their shit. You know, like I think it's
women are attracted to a confident guy who's in control and
right. Yeah. You know, like instead of like, oh well, do you wanna go like maybe go on this like thing with me? Like, can we do a thing? It's like just ask her out. Like, right. You know, like it doesn't have to be this long drawn out thing. Like if you want to take her out, just ask, you know, or whatever. Like I also think, I think a lot of this has to do with fucking, particularly like the dating situation or the, feminization of, or like the turning on the head of the male female dynamic in terms of dating can go right back to dating apps. you know.
To blame it on dating apps?
I mean, the concept, because it's like, you don't have to be committal. Like, you don't have to approach someone. Like, you can just send a hi.
Right.
You know, and then that's, if she responds, awesome. If she doesn't, or if
Whatever,
she doesn't,
you've
then
already swiped
whatever.
right on 47 other girls. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah.
You know, so you don't necessarily have to do too much, you know, to get in there. So there's a lot, like, you don't have, so you can be as, like docile as you want to be, versus, you know, like, you have to actually get the balls to go up to someone these days. And it's like, it takes a lot of courage to actually.
Yeah. Well, what I realized is I learned about hypergamy. Have you heard of that term?
Mm-mm.
Hypergamy is this idea that, actually, we can wrap up the podcast. Do you have any concluding thoughts or anything?
Not really. I mean, I think it's just important that, you know, people do what's good for them, you know, like, and you just have to find, you know, you have to find that for yourself, you know. And so, you know, if at any point in time, like, you're sitting in church, or you're sitting on the bus, or you're, you know, having a drink somewhere and it doesn't feel right, like, get out, you know, like, move on, you know, like, and it's okay, like, and it's scary, you know, to think that, you know, you can just, like, stop doing something you've been doing for a long time, you know, but it's okay. And eventually, like, you'll be better for it, you know, because you did it for yourself, not because it was the quote unquote right thing to do, or the thing you've been doing for so long, so therefore you just kept doing it. You know, like, just do it for you, you know, and then you'll just be better for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's well put. And that's good advice. That's very much a message that I try to put out there. I think people, it's funny when you say it out loud, because it sounds, I can remember Christian ears, what that's like to hear that, and it sounds so selfish. And it sounds so like temptation from Satan to do what feels good.
Yeah.
To do what you want to do with your life. You know, it boggles my mind, because I've been on both sides of the fence about it, but like, to a regular person out there, a secular person, and you tell them, oh, you should live your life and do what you want, and, you know, don't harm anybody else as you're doing it, but, like, if you enjoy playing guitar and you like surfing, like, you should do that with your life.
Right.
Like, they're like, of course. Why?
Yeah.
Why would I not do that?
Right.
That's how it's secular, but, like, to a religious person, you're talking like Satan, you know? Like, do what you want to do with your life.
How dare you?
Yeah, what the fuck is wrong with you? We need to pray for you, brother.
Yeah. I had someone actually, a random lady at an AARP luncheon. I filled in for my dad.
Okay.
He was getting the award. I filled in for him. So I'm, like, sitting at the table. Nothing like sitting at a table with 60 plus old people, because they didn't know how to use their cell phones, and I gave a tutorial on, like, taking pictures. But anyway, so this lady is sitting next to me. She goes, "Are you a Christian?" I'm like, "I grew up in the church." She goes, "How do you share Jesus every day?" And I'm like, well, do I really answer this question?
She could have just said, you know, you didn't answer my question. But instead, I guess she assumed that you actually are a Christian, and then she's asking you how you share Jesus every day.
Yeah, she doubled down.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I just, you know, I go about my life. I do what I feel is right. And hopefully when people are looking at me, they, you know, they can see what's good. And she's just like...
It's a very good political... Because you're being honest in saying that.
Yeah.
But you didn't mention Jesus at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's just like, okay. But, and I'm just like...
Here we go.
I'm leaving now. Thank you. I'm not delving into this with some random old lady at an AARP thing. I'm just like, I just want to teach these women over here how to use their cell phones, and that's going to be the extent of my interactions with you guys.
So you kiboshed it right there.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not going there with you right now.
All right, good for you.
Is not a thing, but it's but yeah, I mean it's a thing where everything you have to do is for the glory of God,
Yeah.
and it's like really.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. But that's my advice. Do you.
Right on. Thus concludes episode 8. I always enjoy connecting with a fellow preacher's kid, hearing how religion deeply influenced them as a youth, but also what degree it's been a positive or negative force in adulthood. Most PKs I've met have left religion behind, but even after doing so, it's often taken years to deprogram certain toxic patterns and forge new habits and behaviors that contribute to a healthier, happier lifestyle. One of these days, I'll interview a PK who actually delved even deeper into religion in their adult years. I'll be quite curious to hear that story. Anyway, hope you enjoyed episode 8. Just 2 more episodes to go till we conclude the first season of the Confusianity podcast. For those of you who've been with us this far, I want to thank you for listening throughout this entire inaugural season. Although it's been a lot of work, recording, editing, posting, promoting, etc., I really enjoyed this process and have learned a lot along the way. And I really hope you've enjoyed listening, and that perhaps the podcast has given you some tasty food for thought, regardless of where you're at spiritually. If by some crazy chance you're listening but are not actually subscribed, hit that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or follow button on Spotify. Basically, whatever button you gotta press in order to keep the episodes coming on your podcast platform of choice. And if you would be so kind, please leave a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts. The more and better ratings we can get, the more it'll really help get this podcast out there in order to reach more people as we wrap season 1 and enter into season 2. Oh, and YouTube, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing that right now. We're just barely shy of 1,000 subscribers, and you can make it happen. Not only will all podcast episodes be available there, but check out the weekly Thinking Out Loud series. And coming very soon will be a new series called Bible Says What? Just visit youtube.com/Confusianity. Hit that subscribe button and you'll be the first to hear when new vids get published. If you have any comments, questions, anything, feel free to reach out on social media. Confusianity is on all the major social media platforms, Twitter, Tumblr, etc., but most prominently on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, looking forward to connecting with you there. All right, people, that's all for today. Take care, my friends.